changes already happening because the introduction slide looks different to what it normally looks like. So just see. Okay. Just seeing how many people are here, but I think that we'll give it a start because we haven't got that much time for this this update. So I guess this is my first update within asset management after assuming the responsibility for the asset management area within IFS. I appreciate many of you don't know me. Many of you do know me, so I'll spend a bit of time today talking about. I love to talk about myself. No, joking aside, I'm going to do a short introduction of myself. Then I'm going to move on to talk a bit about 2025 goals and some of the analyst positioning or feedback on EAM. We have the Heartbeat survey that's coming up, and you should be receiving emails today. If you have joined very recently to R&D, you may not get an email. I don't know, I can't remember how long you need to have worked in order for you to take part in it, but obviously if you're taking part in the survey and how it is to work with an IFS, then it's not particularly helpful for you to respond to that if you haven't worked for IFS more than a week or two. So there is a cutoff date, and if you don't receive one or joined recently, that's probably the reason. If you worked for a longer period of time within IFS but haven't received it by the end of today, then let your line manager know so we can sort that out. But usually that goes quite well. I've added a placeholder towards the end of questions that I would like you to gather questions that you have. This is an open and safe place to ask questions, and no question is stupid. And feel free to raise your hand and ask questions along the way. You can also make use of the chat if you just want to ask a question in the chat as well, and I'll get back to all of those. Okay, so who am I then? I worked with IFS for a long time. I started back in 1995, so I've spent a large proportion of my life working within IFS. I live in Stavanger, which is here on the left-hand side with the red dot. If you can look all the way over to on the right-hand side, you have Linköping, which is over here, and Gothenburg, which is here. And this is my hometown. I have not lived here my whole life. I have lived other places for 25 years of that as well. After university, I moved to Oslo or Asker outside of Oslo, started working for IFS back in 95 as a software engineer. I moved to the UK in 2004 with IFS, and I was supposed to be there for 2 years, but I spent 14 years, and that's well, what normally happens when life progresses and you stand just watching it pass by. A lot of things happened on the way that resulted in me staying for a long time in the UK, and I relocated back to Norway and then Stavanger, my hometown, in 2018, and that's where I'm based now. I love the outdoors, and I'll talk a bit about that. I spend a lot of time in the surrounding areas of Stavanger and the mountains in the area. We have, my family and I, we have a cabin up in the mountains that we frequently visit, used during the summer and the winter. Yes, I started off as a software engineer within R&D, and I probably had all conceivable roles there is to do within an R&D organization, as a software engineer, a software architect, business system analyst, what we now call a product specialist, been a program manager, slightly different program managers to the program managers we have now, but still. I've been a director, a VP. I worked in the consulting organization. I worked supporting pre-sales as part of the work that I've been doing. I love building up highly efficient organizations. I have, as I have been programming in my earlier days as a software engineer, I also like technical details, and I will understand technical concepts as part of discussions I do. One of my strengths and weaknesses is that I like details and can go into detail if there is a need, but also it's easy to get consumed into those details and not get out of it again. So I need to be careful I don't involve myself in too much detail and actually have an organization that can help me answer the questions that we have without me necessarily going into those in detail myself. If you see the red dot over here, that is actually a long fjord that goes in there. That's called the Lysefjord, which is kind of world famous because it got the pulpit chair amongst other things, which is a plateau, a flat plateau that's 700 meters that you can hike to. And the pictures I'm going to show you now is from a trip that we did earlier this summer, where I went with my daughter, and this is a very strenuous hike where you have to, it took us maybe 7 hours to get in and out again. And I didn't really plan for my daughter to do this trip for a couple of years, but we had some relatives. That were, see, there's something wrong with the animation here. Hang on, I'm just gonna fix. Fix that as part of this, yeah. So so this hike you can see that starts in the inner part of the fjord. So we hiked for maybe a couple of hours already. And when we're on top of this mountain, there's about 1,000 meters straight down into the fjord. And this is me and my daughter. They're standing on a rock that's wedged in a crack in the mountain. And as you can see, there is from this point here, there's 959 meters straight down drop. So you obviously don't want to drop down from this rock, and you actually kind of have to take a big step or a jump onto that rock to actually stand on it. I actually never thought my daughter would do this either, but she's probably more similar to me than I thought, liking to take challenges and taking risks as part of what she does. My wife did not go onto that rock, and she was actually lining up in a queue with my daughter. I was supposed to take a picture, and she never turned up on the rock because my wife thought my daughter would change her mind and not do it. But she was so adamant that she was just walking straight into that rock that my wife had to hold her back and tell her, you're not allowed to go there. So I had to go with my daughter. Nobody's ever fallen off that rock. And there are tens of thousands of people taking this hike every year and standing on that rock taking pictures. There have been discussions of putting up safety measurements like a chain or something like that they could hold on to a hook into, but the probability of accidents happening if you put safety measures in place is significantly higher than if you don't have them, because here people will be very, very careful when they do things. If they've got safety measures in place, they will probably rely on those safety measures, and there's a higher risk of accidents actually happening. So, who wants to go on a hike with me? Maybe not that hike, but there are lots of hikes that's possible to do in the area that's less risky as part of that. So within the organization, I started up building project capabilities, so project management, document management. They are both my babies. I started writing the first code lines we ever had in those areas, and they've been well taken care of by other parts of the organization. At some point, I handed over document management in the capable hands of Matthias Dahl, who's done a great job of actually shepherding that afterwards, for instance, together with many of you that are on this call. I was responsible for the service and asset group in the past, before it became service management, asset management. Back then, we combined it into the service, projects and asset group, or the SPA group. I think there were almost 250 people in that organization. That also included field service management, CRM, not CRM, but customer engagement as part of that. I started building up the independent project management function within R&D when Christian Pedersen came in. And after some time, I then got asked to build up an organization focusing on procurement. And with some local changes in Sri Lanka, I also assumed responsibility for the commerce part of our offering. And after that, I also assumed responsibility for the aviation maintenance execution, part of the A&D organization. I've handed over procurement and commerce to supply chain as part of this change, and the aviation maintenance execution is now headed up by Tracy Abbott in the former A&D organization. And obviously I will work closely with Tracy going forward as part of the asset application group that we all are part of. And I'm now going to be making sure that we together are very successful in the focus around asset management within IFS. So that's a bit of a background for me. I want to talk a bit about the 2025 goals within IFS and how those relate specifically to some of the work that we are doing here, right? The main target that we all focus on is growing our revenue to $2 billion by end of 2025, which is a very ambitious target, but we're on track to achieve that. We have a good average software growth rate within IFS supporting that growth, and we will not be able to do that without having happy customers. So we need to have a good customer satisfaction as part of what we need to do. And we also need to increase brand awareness, because if we don't have the brand awareness, we won't make the short lists of potential vendors to deliver solutions to our target market. And obviously, we need to make sure that we have happy customers as well as happy employees achieving that. And a part of the Pulse survey that we do on a regular basis within IFS is part of assessing how we are performing against that. Is your opportunity to, in a anonymous setting, to provide feedback on how we actually perform and what we need to improve on. So if you look at this from specifically an EAM perspective, the first 4 boxes on the target are things that we can directly contribute towards. We want to become an EAM market leader in 2025. Some would say that we already are, and depending on how you look at EAM, we would already be in that position. I'll come a bit back to that. But in order for us to get to $2 billion revenue, to have a 25% average software growth rate, meaning that for every single year we grow by 25%, we need to make certain We have to take certain actions in order to do that. And last year, we introduced a Center of Excellence for EAM. The Center of Excellence focus is accelerating growth and make sure we sell more of EAM in the market in general. There is a dedicated sales team supporting the regions around the world and the business units. They spend time building enablement material, marketing material, start campaigns. And for those of you that took part in one of the all hands meeting that you have, the digital group event you've had within the group previously, Niels van der Sil spoke a bit about this, and also that the initial focus is targeting maximum and info customer base as part of that. He's been quite successful in recruiting quite a lot of people, and the Center of Excellence is now constituting of 29 people. And I think that within our organization, we're probably 85 within R&D, focused within the asset management group. And there are other people outside of asset management that are also working with adding value to our customers in the EAM space in general. Within R&D, we also have a significant increase in headcount. Some of you may recall there was a number of 50 earlier this year. Depending on how you look at this, there is a certain cost base related to each and every employee. And if you recruit people in one part of the world, the cost base will be slightly different. So at the moment, the budget is a bit over 40, because we are recruiting some people in Europe, a lot of people in Sri Lanka as part of that. But nevertheless, a significant increase in headcount. And our focus within R&D is to accelerate investments to support the growth plan of the board and of the company overall. We within R&D are still defining or deciding what we should be investing in, and we are making good use of Stefan and Martin to help us decide which investments we should be doing within EAM in order to support those growth plans. And those details have been shared with you a number of times before, so I'm not planning to go into those in detail at this point in time. Within our group, we then had an increase, based on my calculations, of 28 people from this EAM evolution. We've recruited in 21 so far, so we still got a few more people to recruit in. And there are also other groups within R&D. They're also recruiting in people to support this EAM growth. I don't have the numbers to what they are. I didn't get time to get those numbers from the other groups. But I know that they have been recruiting in people. I just don't know how many yet. But with this, there is also an expectation that we actually deliver more value with the resources that we have, right? That said, we got a fantastic product, and I'll show you some of those, show you some content backing up that as part of this meeting. And the Center of Excellence will focus on selling more, but we need to collaborate together to make sure that the product and what we bring to market, and that's not just the code and the product that we deliver, is everything around enablement, making things easier. That is key to a lot of things, because if there's too high effort to actually sell, it's too high effort to implement, it's too high effort to support and maintain, we will not be able to sell as much as we could. It gets complicated for pre-sales to demonstrate. It gets complicated from a messaging perspective out to the market. We're not going to sell as much as we could. So we need to help support each other to make sure it's easy to sell this, remove obstacles to pre-sales and sales going out and selling this. We need to make sure that's easy for our partners as well as our own consulting services to implement this at customers. And we need to make sure it's easy to support and maintain it for our customers, for our partners, for our own support organization within the wider IFS as well as within R&D. If there's some background noise, it's just my blinds behind me that's lowering, so I picked up. So by 2025, we should be a leader in EAM. And then I throw up a slide that says that Gartner says that IFS is #1 when it comes to global EAM market share by revenue already. So aren't we a leader already? Well, yes, we are, but it also depends on how you actually define EAM. And in Gartner's definition of EAM in this space is quite a wide definition, right? If you look at ARC, looking at how much, how big market share we got within A&D, we are by far the undisputed leader, right? And if you look at aviation maintenance, the customers we have in there, the work that we do with Noble and others, yes, we have a significant market share. We are the undisputed leader from that perspective, but there are many different ways of looking at EAM, right? IDC claim that we are a leader, but there are lots of leaders. Are we happy to be just one out of many, or do we want to be one out of few, or the only one? And obviously we want to move forward, so further to the right and further upwards in the various, I'm not sure I want to call this a quadrant, but competitive, not sure I want to call it, we call it a quadrant. We want to move to the right and we want to move upwards in this picture, right? As part of this. This is one that's looking at asset-intensive EAM applications. There is another one here that talks about IFS having the fastest growing position within EAM. And we're not that far behind our main competition, right? If you look at IBM and Maximo, they're at 9.3 market share. IFS got 6.5, and we are growing faster than anyone else. IBM is actually reducing, have a negative growth. SAP is growing significantly slower than us as part of this. So we got a fantastic position to claim the #1 spot. And with the investments that are happening in the Center of Excellence, the investment happening in R&D, the focus from IFS's board, the willingness to invest and build up sales capacity, we have got a fantastic run ahead of ourselves. The challenge we will have is to keeping up with this, because we will become extremely successful in selling EAM solutions. But if it's easier to sell, or we have more volume coming in, it still needs to be easier to implement. It still needs to be easier to maintain and support, which is where a part of our investment needs to go, in addition to actually investing in new capabilities to support the businesses of our customers. We don't want firefighting. We want people to go out and needs to be able to implement, and the software does what it needs to do for those markets and those industries that we sell into. There's another one looking at manufacturers that also make use of EAM as part of their operation. We're also here, according to IDC, in the leaders quadrant. If you look at IDC from a utilities, we're not a leader. And this is definitely an area where we should be a leader as well. And I'll share all these slides with you so you can read through them. And my intention is not to go through this in detail during this call. And there's another one for oil and gas, and you would think that perhaps we're also a leader in oil and gas, but there are other players like SAP and Maximo that are doing better than us from that perspective. We're a specialist in a certain type of oil and gas, whilst SAP is dominant if you look at the asset owner operator type field that we haven't really been able to penetrate yet. And we should be a leader in all of these, because they're all within the same industries that we focus on. So I'm just going to go back a bit to this slide. So Center of Excellence will only be successful if we are successful together. At R&D, we will only be successful if we're working well together with the Center of Excellence and everybody else, right? When we define what to invest in, we need to engage with all our stakeholders across the organization, including the Center of Excellence, which will be a significant stakeholder in this. And we do that on a regular basis with all of our stakeholders to make sure we make the best possible investment decisions. But we need to engage more with Center of Excellence than we've done in the past. I don't know specifically what they're doing at spending time on at the moment, but if they are out there supporting sales to go out and sell, we will sell more. If they're building enablement and marketing material and starting campaigns, we need to be aware of that as well, so that we can align expectations with Center of Excellence on what we are investing in. The last part I wanted to just cover is the heartbeat survey. You should receive an email today, as I said. Please do spend the time answering this, and please add comments to the answers that you provide. Scoring is one thing. 9 and 10 means that you're happy and positive about the question and its relation to IFS or your colleagues or your line managers or whatever it is. 7 and 8 means you're passive or neutral, and 6 or less means that you disagree and are happy with a specific question. And the aim here is not for you to score 9 or 10. You should obviously answer representative for how you feel, but if it's not a 9 or a 10, it will by definition be a detractor from this. But the key here is the comments that you add, right? Because that's really what helps us shape discussions and get input into how we should be improving business, how we should improving how it is to be an employee working at IFS. And that is really the last part of the last goal, which I didn't get time to add the goal itself that is here, but it's related to the customer engagement, right? And that's also driven by how we do the heartbeat surveys. Okay, so I will have time for some questions if you have any, and please, there must be some, because must be mulling a bit over the change happening in the organization, what that means, and what the future brings. I don't think there's been any questions in the chat either.
Daniel here. I have a question. How much time do we spend on supporting our customers today? How much time in R&D? Like number of hours for support?
Yeah, it's probably a question that Agnieszka can answer. Way too much, I would say, but it's still needed. We need to honor the commitments we make to our customers. We need to support them, but we should be spending way less doing that, and that also should be an input into how we inform our investment decisions to reduce the need on that. Anyway, Agnieszka, you can answer that question.
I don't know how much of time we spend from R&D, but I can maybe comment from asset management, Daniel. So we spend, from everything we have, we spend about 37% of the time we spend in support. And from hours point of view, in September, we have spent about 4,800 hours. And we fluctuate. It's been more in September, but it's been less in August. But in September, it's been about 4,800 hours. I don't have the answers for overall R&D though. And from a percentage point of view, asset management spends about 37%.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks for the question, Daniel. And the aim is that we shouldn't be spending more than 10% of our available developed capacity on support. So we obviously got a long way to go there, but I do intend to start a process of initiative to look at ways we can actually reduce the time we spend on support. And keep in mind that a significant share of the time we spend on support is also spent just answering questions, making things clear and understandable, supporting the global support organization, for instance, and not necessarily directly related to a defect. And there are initiatives ongoing there as well, so that we over time should see a reduction in time spent on those type of activities. But I think overall within R&D is probably closer to 50% of our time is spent on non-defects related support issues. Any other questions? There must be one more question. Otherwise, we're going to sit there for a long time until a question is asked. Come on, so one of you must have a question. No? Okay. If you do have any questions, you can reach out to me. You can reach out directly to your line manager, and then you can send me a chat. You can email me, and I'll be happy to answer any question that you have. Okay, so with that, we'll end this update, and have a nice rest of your day.